Okay, so in a previous tutorial video, we talked about the rectangular and elliptical marquee tools to create selections. But what happens when you have an object that is not a geometric shape like a rectangle or a circle? Well, in that instance, normally what I would do is I would go to the color selection tools, and usually I use the quick selection tool because that's a tool that finds the edges based on color contrast. Now, this would actually probably work for this, and normally I would say work smarter, not harder, and use this first and add the lasso tool later in case you have any areas you want to clean up. But because these tutorial videos are teaching you all the different tools, we're going to use the lasso tool just for this particular bomber. Okay, so a couple of things you need to know. First of all, when you click on the lasso tool, there are three. The original lasso tool actually lets you just draw freeform selections. The polygonal or polygonal, and I don't know how you pronounce it, so I just say both of them, but that allows you to draw straight lines, which is going to help us a lot back here, but probably won't help us when it gets curvy up here. And then we have the magnetic lasso tool, and this is for your really, really hard selections where you can't get it to work any other way because it allows you to create magnetic points, or it tries to create magnetic points for you for that selection. And you'll see what I mean in a second. Now, before we start selecting this, you have to make sure that your feather's on 0 unless you want it to have a little bit of a feather, and that just means a soft edge on your selection. But if you had something like 50 and you were to draw some weird kidney bean shape, it's going to sort of make it look like a, what the heck are those purple vegetables? I don't know, eggplant, there you go. So it's going to really try to smooth it out for you, and you don't want to have that happen. So we're going to choose 0 so that it keeps it as accurate as we drew it. And then we're going to deselect this so we don't have to see it. Okay, another thing is make sure that you are on add to selection or create a new selection, because if you're on subtract from selection, you're going to draw this whole thing and then get mad because it won't actually select it because it was on subtraction. Now, it's important when you're on the lasso tool that you're on the layer that you want to select the pixels on, especially when you're working with something like the magnetic lasso tool. So let's go ahead and start with the first one. The lasso tool just allows you to freeform draw. So I'll go ahead and click and drag, and I'm not releasing my mouse, but just moving it along these edges. And I'm not very good right now, too fast, too unsteady, and I don't want to select the whole thing. So I'm just going to do that. And there it allowed you to create a freeform selection. Now I could hit Command or Control J, and that will show you there's the basic selection I freehand drew. Okay. So let's go ahead and go back to our B2 bomber. It's important that you select this image again. If you stay on here, then it'll freak out when you try to select it. So when I'm on this particular layer, it might be easier to do the polygonal lasso tool because it has a lot of sharp lines here. So what's going to happen with that one is I'll click on it. And now instead of clicking and dragging, what I'm going to do is find a corner point and click once to create an anchor. And now when I move along, you'll see this little arrow is following me, and I'm not clicking and dragging, I'm just moving my mouse. It's following me along. Did I say arrow or line? Anyway, the line is following me. So I'll go to the next corner and click. So then I'll go here, click, 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 click all the way down here, click all the way down here. And again, I'm not doing the whole thing. Click, there we go. So now if I hit Command or Control J, let's look at the results. So here we have the lasso tool that I just drew myself. And there I have the polygonal lasso tool that actually did a pretty darn good job. So let's go and check out the magnetic lasso tool. The magnetic lasso tool is hard. I'm not going to lie to you guys. It's hard, it's weird, but sometimes it really comes through for you in a pinch. But there's a couple things you need to know about this magnetic lasso tool. First of all, it tries to find the edge for you based on color. When there's a high contrast of color, it's going to have a really easy time. When you get down here, where it's sort of light gray on light gray or light bluish gray, it's going to have a hard time. So what we're going to do here, and I'll just probably start from up here. So what we're going to do is kind of the same, well, it's a kind of a mashup between the lasso and the polygonal lasso tool. I can click to add anchor points, and then I just need to run my mouse. I'm not pressing down, I'm just moving it, and see how it's adding those little anchor points on its own. Now, anytime I want to change direction, because otherwise it won't do anything, and look what just happened there. I tried to get out of it, and you start creating all these, and you click, and you just add more, and it never ends. So this is why people always find this tool frustrating, is because if you start moving your mouse, it's just going to keep creating anchor points. And how to get rid of those anchor points, you have to move your mouse back and just keep hitting delete. Keep moving it along until you get back. There we go. So now I'm going to click wherever I turn a corner. So click. Now I'm just moving, moving, moving. And you only have to click when you're turning a corner or it's having a hard time distinguishing color. So I'll click, move it along. See how it's having a hard time and it went inside of the plane. So I'll come back here and hit delete. And when I come here, just click just to get through this little rough patch. I'm just clicking, clicking, clicking. Now I should be able to move along. It's dropping those itself. Click because I'm at a turning point. Moving along. Click. Moving along. Click. So see how it's creating a nice magnetic clean line? So this is really helpful until you start doing weird stuff like this, or until it starts, see how it will not find the edge for you? So this is where we're going to have to manually go like tiny little increments yourself, and then sometimes it wants to pull in like that. So this is why it's really frustrating, because it's tedious. And by the way, when you're done with this selection, let's pretend I'm done with it because I'm tired of it. Okay, when you're done with this selection, do not do anything to it right now, because that was a hard one selection. It would take you hours. Just kidding. It would take you like at least 15 minutes to do this selection. Do not delete it. Go up to the select menu and choose save selection and call this bomber. Because what that's going to do is if you accidentally hit like Command or Control J or delete it or deselect it, and you only had a portion of it, or you wanted to use that selection again for some reason, then we've got a problem. Like if I wanted to make this part of the wing darker for some reason, let's pretend I'm doing a mashup where it looks like it exploded or has fire coming out of it, and I want this glow orange or yellow. Then what I can do is go up to select and choose load selection and choose my bomber and then click OK. And then that selection comes back. So if you do a really complex selection, it's always a good idea to save it first, just in case. And it'll always save it with that document. So again, the use of the lasso tools are kind of a last resort, unless the polygonal lasso tool I use a lot for, like, let's say there's triangles, or you're looking at a skyscraper from below and it's not a rectangle, but it's just sort of a, like, what is that? That wedge pyramid shape? I don't know, whatever. So, and I use the lasso tool. I actually use that quite a bit, but usually what I'll do is I'll select something with a quick selection tool, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'll select something and it might forget a little spot and it might have a hard time. See how it's finding all those edges? And if it has a hard time, what I'll do is come back in with my lasso tool and choose add to selection. And I'll just do that tiny little corner. You don't even have to close it. And then over here, I'll switch back to subtract from selection. And I'll just do that tiny little corner. And there we go. So I use that tool a lot for cleanup of my selections.